So you want big arms, but where do you start? Now, a lot of you have asked, do I need a dedicated arm day to make my arms grow? Should I put my arm day with other exercises and other body parts? What do I do? How many sets do I need? How many reps should I take for each set? Today, I'm gonna go over all of that and more. But first, let's go over the 3 muscle groups that you're gonna need to work in order to get big arms. Let's go. There are 2 types of movements that you're gonna need to do with your biceps in order to have bigger arms. 1 is the standard biceps curl, and 2 is the hammer curl. The standard biceps curl targets the short head of the biceps, and we do the standard biceps curl with the arms externally rotated and the hands supinated. You can use any type of equipment that you want for the standard biceps curl. You can use dumbbells, you can use barbells, you can use easy bar, you can use cables, bands, whatever it is, as long as there's enough resistance, you can use whatever type of equipment that you want. In this case, I'm gonna use standard dumbbells for the biceps curl. If you take a look at the bench, I've got a set of 30s and I have a set of 40s. Everything is in pounds, not kilograms, and there's a reason that I have lighter weight versus heavier weight, and I'm gonna get into that in a second. So for our standard biceps curl, we wanna make sure that the arms are externally rotated. That means turning them out and the hands are supinated. Now, wrist position is also important when you do this exercise. I prefer a wrist position that is relatively neutral and fixed. It puts more tension on the biceps and there's less risk of wrist injury. We want to have the inside portion of the biceps and the triceps locked against the lats. So I've got them locked in place. I have my wrists in a nice strong position. You can do this in one of 2 ways. You can do a double standard biceps curl, or you can do them individually or unilaterally. Both work extremely well. There is more tension created with a double biceps curl because I have less time for each arm to relax. So if I'm working with a heavier weight, I can go into my unilateral curl, so this arm gets a chance to relax while this one contracts, and vice versa. Now, there are 2 arm positions that you can take. You'll see a lot of people take biceps curls with the elbows way back and they try to curl in here. And essentially they're shortening the distance of the curl. What I like to do, and I think is more effective, is to bring the elbows slightly forward of the torso. So I don't have my arms back here, I have them slightly forward, locked in, and you can see immediately as I start, there's a tremendous amount of tension on the biceps. I'm looking for an extra tight squeeze all the way through, all the way to the top. Another mistake I see people make is when they curl and they reach the top, they relax the biceps curl and they dump into the shoulder. It's not effective. You can see I'm not even contracted at the biceps. So when you curl, you make sure that the biceps is contracted all the way to the top. Make sure you're aware of that contraction and make sure that you don't lose it. The second exercise for big arms that involves the biceps is the hammer curl. And the hammer curl works the long head of the biceps and the brachialis and brachioradialis that come right across the elbow into the forearm. And they are extremely important for building a bigger looking arm. So the bigger your forearms are, the bigger your arms are. And the bigger that the brachialis and brachioradialis are, the bigger your arms will look overall. Now typically, since there are 2 more muscles involved in this exercise, you should be a little bit stronger, and that is why I have 40 pounds as opposed to the 30 pounds for the standard biceps curl. So let me show you what it looks like. There again are 2 positions just like there are with the standard biceps curl. We want to set up the same way, but instead of having the arms externally rotated and the hands supinated, we have a neutral position, just like you would grip a hammer. Now, as far as elbow positions, far more difficult to bring the elbows forward and put the weights on the thighs. And essentially, that eliminates any momentum that I may be able to generate at the bottom by swinging. I can't swing from here. I can't swing my body to try to get it up, and it's a lot harder in this position. And if you take a look, if I slowly curl from this position, there is a ton of tension on the biceps and on the brachialis and on the brachioradialis. Now, the slightly easier position is in a neutral, almost anatomical position. So curling from here, slightly easier because I've shortened the distance up a little bit. Again, with this, we can alternate unilaterally, or we can take a double position at the same time. Both work well. Now, unlike the biceps that have 2 heads, the triceps have 3 heads. There's a lateral head, a medial head, and a long head. So it's important, if you want fullness in the triceps, that you work all 3 heads. And with all 3 heads, there are 3 different positions that you're going to need to use. Now, there are a million different types of grips that you can use for your triceps exercises, especially on the cable machine. You've got W bars, you've got straight bars, you've got handles, you've got ropes. For our purposes now, I am using a dual grip handle. So they're connected. And this is a pretty versatile piece of equipment because you can use it for all 3 positions without having to change handles. Okay, we're gonna start with the medial head. And in order to work the medial head, you're going to use a reverse grip triceps extension. And with the reverse grip triceps extension, you're probably gonna need to use less weight. You have a little less mechanical advantage in this position, so plan accordingly. I've got 17.5 pounds on my selectorized cable station. I'm gonna grab my grips. I'm gonna turn and make sure, so I'm externally rotating my arms and I have my hands in a nice neutral position. I've got the elbows locked into the body and I'm slowly gonna pretend like I'm trying to back fist someone by extending the arms all the way back and flexing. Now, am I in a locked out position? That's fully locked out. If you go to a fully locked out position, you have to remember to keep the muscle engaged. If I go to a fully locked out position without engaging the muscle, I go into the joint, and then injuries can happen. So we want to get a full extension all the way back. We don't want to over squeeze it, but we want to get a nice tight squeeze. We want to return almost to start position, keeping as much tension on the triceps as we can. So in real time, just like this, I've got a slight angle on my position. I don't have it locked in tight like this. There's about a 30-degree angle at the wrist. Now, seamlessly, I can transition right into my triceps press down, which works the lateral head of the triceps. With this, I'm gonna wanna put a little bit more weight on, play around with it, a little trial and error helps. Same thing, about a 30 to 45-degree angle at the hand. I've got the lats locked in and bridged against the triceps. I wanna press down, fully extend, palms face behind me, bend the elbow slightly, keeping tension on it. This is where you wanna grab your abdominals a little bit also. So we get a big full squeeze, working lateral head of the triceps. When you do that exercise, be careful not to round the shoulders. You want the chest in a nice high position. Rounding of the shoulders can lead to rotator cuff injury. And last but not least, the long head of the triceps. And we get this accomplished with an overhead triceps extension. You can either use the same weight that you had on for the press down or bring it down a little bit. Again, trial and error works. So I want to get weight forward, so body weight forward. I want my elbows nice and high. My hands are in that 30-degree position again. Nice neutral position with the torso, abs nice and tight, and I want to extend my arms straight out in front, almost like Superman. Now, if you notice when I come back, I want to keep the elbows relatively fixed in this position. You can, if you want, stretch back a little more, get a little bit of momentum, but not a lot, and then extend back to the same exact position. It helps the triceps to stretch out. It's personal preference. Some people like to do it. Some people like to keep the elbows in a fixed position like so. So now you've got all 3 triceps exercises to work all 3 heads of the triceps and make a fuller arm. All right, before we get to the next muscle group, I want to talk about sets, reps, and how often you should be training arms during the week. I typically train arms twice a week. Now, you have to keep in mind when training arms that every single other exercise that you do for upper body and some for lower body works arms. So if you're doing a chest day, you're getting triceps work. If you're doing a back day, you're getting biceps work and of course forearm work as well. So should you train your arms when you do your other upper body work, or should you have a dedicated day just for them? Now, I've done both over the years and both work extremely well. I like to mix and match things, so I typically train arms twice a week, and occasionally, if I want a really solid arm blast, I will train them by themselves. But I will do other exercises. So I might do a leg day and then save a little bit of time at the end just to concentrate on arms. And when you just concentrate on arms, you should be able to lift more weight and you should be able to put a little bit more volume into the workout as well. If you're training your arms with other body parts, other upper body parts, they may be fatigued by the time you get to them, and that's a good thing too. It's not necessarily a bad thing. So you may have some pre-exhaustion, and that may lead to bigger gains if you're able to maintain the same intensity and create the same amount of volume. Typically when I train arms, I like to do 4 to 5 sets of each exercise, and I like to keep the rep count relatively high. If I use a weight that's too heavy and I have a low rep count, 3 to 5 reps, I personally don't feel that I get as much out of it, and I can't feel the isolation where I want to. So for instance, in a biceps curl, if I'm trying to curl 50 or 60 pounds and I can only get it a few times and I feel it more in my shoulders and my chest and my abs, that doesn't help out my biceps. So I like to keep the rep range somewhere between 8 and 15 reps, but I mainly go by contraction. So if I get to the end of 15 reps and I feel a complete burn and contraction in my biceps, triceps, or forearms, then I know I got the set right. If I get to the end of a set, say, and only do 8 reps, and I may have 4 or 5 more reps in the tank, and I don't feel that full contraction, I know I need to go a little bit harder and add some more reps the next set. So 8 to 15 repetitions per set, 5 sets per exercise, and 2 to 3 exercises per muscle group, usually 2 times a week. Now when it comes to sets, those of you on my program know that I like to include supersets. That's going from one exercise without rest to the next exercise. Sometimes I like to superset biceps by themselves, so that means one biceps exercise immediately followed by another biceps exercise. Other times I will superset biceps and then triceps. So first a biceps exercise, immediately over to a triceps exercise, which gives me the ability to then go right back to that biceps exercise and then maybe include a little bit of cardiovascular work in the set as well. Now the final component of having big arms is a debatable component, and that is forearms. Now there are a lot of people that work their forearms constantly, and there are other people like me who don't specifically do a lot of work for the forearms. You can see all day long I'm picking things up. I'm picking up weights, so as I grip and squeeze, my forearm is going to work. So anytime I do any type of exercise that involves gripping, pulling, grasping, the forearm gets worked. You also get a tremendous amount of work when you're doing your hammer curls. That's a great exercise to build the forearms. There are 2 other exercises that I will do from time to time if I do feel like my forearms are lacking. So if you're someone who has smaller forearms, and I really do believe that forearms are relatively genetic, kind of like calves are. You either have really small calves or decent calves, and you either have really small forearms or you have big forearms. Everyone's a little bit different, but you can do something about it if you need to. So one exercise that I will do is a reverse curl, and I'm using a W bar. And when you take the reverse curl, there's one thing I do want you to do to make it a little bit more effective. When I have the barbell at my thighs, I'm gonna curl it in. So now I'm contracting my forearm flexors, and that's underneath on the opposite side of the forearms. So I've got the forearm flexors contracted. Just before I start my curl at the elbow, I wanna take my wrists and then start to extend. So you can see what happens to the forearms as I start to extend. Those are the forearm extensors. And they can grow. They can't grow a ton. I mean, they're small muscles and small muscle groups, but they can help. So I want to extend and squeeze my grip relatively tight as I reverse curl the bar. As I come back down, I want to slowly start to then curl underneath again. So I'm going to get the best of both worlds. I've got forearm flexors and I have forearm extensors.